Mr. Harris.
Mr. Deputy Speaker, thank you. And can I begin with an apology to the Treasury bench? I have something of a mild chest infection, and if I do cough at any point, I wouldn't want the spores to carry across the debating chamber, and then for me to be blamed in a couple of days' time if they come down with the dreaded lurgy. Can I also say how delighted I am that the honourable member from Newbury will be responding on behalf of the government, and I look forward to that. I know he takes a very close and personal interest in our country's forests. I've enjoyed today's debate, Mr. Deputy Speaker, almost as much as I've enjoyed watching the permanently confused faces of the ministers opposite. There have been some excellent contributions that have not only highlighted government failings, but have offered us a way forward, and I hope that the government has listened. This dreadful disease will subject 80 million ash trees to a slow decline over the coming decades, changing our landscape forever. It will hit the pockets of the nursery owners, the timber merchants and the taxpayer, and it will wreak untold damage on our biodiversity, pushing species that rely on ash towards extinction. The reality of the problem in front of us is stark and was ably described by the Minister of State at the beginning of this debate. Ash dieback has been confirmed in 155 sites, including 15 nurseries that had imported infected plants and 15 plantations which had received young trees. Most worryingly, it's now been found in 65 established woodland sites. Scientific opinion, sadly, is now unanimous that trying to stop the disease is a lost cause. So how did we get here? Can I just say to honourable members opposite who complain about political points being made during this debate, can they just have a quick look at the letter they got from their whip's office? It will have the words Opposition Day debate. It is the job of this party to oppose the government. That's what we are doing, and it is our job to expose the failings of ministers opposite when that is necessary, and it is necessary now. Despite recent personnel changes, Mr. Deputy Speaker, it's not difficult to identify DEFRA ministers. They can be identified by their permanently bewildered and startled expressions, by their tendency as they stagger from one urgent question to statement and back again to mutter curses against their own civil servants along the lines of, "Why wasn't I told about this before now?" What a terrific record ministers have in this department. Having refused to ban wild animals in circuses because it might conflict with their human rights, having postponed the Badger Cull because no one told the department that London was hosting the 2012 Olympic Games, DEFRA ministers now find themselves in charge of a new national crisis when the fungus which causes ash dieback was discovered in England. What could possibly go wrong, Mr. Deputy Speaker? As soon as the UK presence of cholera was confirmed to ministers on the 3rd of April this year, they leapt into action in a veritable blur of activity. The alarm was raised. With breathtaking urgency and efficiency, the dynamism for which DEFRA is known became all too evident. Before we knew it, a mere 5 months later, a consultation was launched. On behalf of a grateful nation, Mr. Deputy Speaker, can I just say, phew. The Secretary of State himself sadly misspoke when he told the House on the 25th of September, "The minute we heard about this, we launched a consultation." That would be an absurd statement, heavy with subconscious irony, even if it were true, except it was not true. There was a completely unacceptable and unnecessary delay of 5 months between ministers being told about cholera infection and the consultation being launched. Why? It's the equivalent, Mr. Deputy Speaker, of seeing a burglar breaking into a neighbour's house and responding by writing a stern and urgent letter to the local police asking for opinion on local crime prevention initiatives and then posting it with a second-class stamp. Of course, the current Secretary of State cannot be held entirely to blame for his department's peculiar reluctance to act when it should have acted 7 months ago, and the former Secretary of State is chuntering from a sedentary position. Highly appropriate. After all, he had only been in his job since early September. Had he been in post back in April, had a civil servant perhaps dared to interrupt the latest of his many and graphic demonstrations of how to drown a badger the proper way with news of the cholera infection, he might have acted immediately. He might have, not with a consultation, but with an immediate import ban and a public information campaign. Yet, when the ministerial car dropped him at DEFRA for the first time 10 weeks ago, and he walked into his new office, clutching his good luck card from the Northern Ireland office and his Brian May dartboard, was he even briefed as to the seriousness of this infestation? If he was, did he even ask officials' advice as to whether he could end the consultation early and impose an immediate ash import ban? Did he even ask the questions, the reasons behind having the consultation in the first place? Surely he recognised that in this case, every day that the consultation lasted was an extra day in which the cholera spores could and certainly would spread. And on Friday the 2nd of November, 7 months after ministers were told, the Secretary of State finally found time in his diary to convene a COBRA meeting to come up with a plan to respond to the disease. But on the same day, he used the functions and resources of his private office and the civil service to write an exclusive briefing letter for the eyes of colleagues on that side of the House only. And that will explain to the honourable gentleman, the member for New Forest East, why on this side of the House, these words he read out were completely new. We were not worthy to receive this great letter from the Secretary of State, only Conservative and Lib Dem MPs. And I'm going to ask the Parliamentary Under-Secretary of State, because I know that he is a reasonable man, does he honestly believe that when his boss decided only to brief Conservative Lib Dem MPs that was a proper action for a Secretary of State? And I think I know what the answer publicly will be, but he's an honourable and very understanding gentleman, and I'm sure he understands that that was a gross disservice to the House. This is not an issue that demands a secretive, high-handed approach. This is an issue that demands everybody involved, from the top of government to the general public and from across the political spectrum, pull together and take the necessary steps to fight against a destructive and devastating disease. With this in mind, will the Minister now promise to keep opposition members informed throughout this process? Everyone in this House has the right to know what's going on, as do our constituents. On the topic of sharing intelligence, why was advice to tree growers and the public on the best way to spot and prevent the spreading of the disease not issued immediately after cholera's presence in the UK was confirmed? Does the Minister seriously believe that this delay was acceptable? If he could turn the clock back, is he telling the House that he would do the same thing all over again? And what early estimates have the Department made about the cost to the Exchequer of fighting this disease? The Minister of State said that lessons will be learned. How can lessons be learned if no mistakes have been made? If mistakes have been made, what mistakes have been made? I have no doubt that ministers will do what they always do whenever the opposition has the barefaced cheek to oppose them on anything. Blame the last Labour government. Although, Mr. Deputy Speaker, I prefer the phrase most recent government to last Labour government. But perplexing as it is, they are in government, we are not. It is they who, at least occasionally, must take responsibility for the running of the country. And if they don't blame us, and they will, if they don't blame us, they'll blame something else, like the weather or the wind. Science says it is a possibility the spores were blown across the sea from the continent to the UK. That small possibility has been turned by every single government MP into a cast iron fact, a fact that is simply not supported by science. Ministers have a great deal to answer for. That is less a partisan political point than a simple statement of democratic principle. This happened on their watch. It's not good enough for them to try to wriggle out of the responsibility they bear. The inaction, the dithering, the delay that ministers have shown is tantamount to a dereliction of duty. And the mishandling of this sorry episode is symptomatic of the dearth of leadership and the abundance of incompetence inside the department. Government inaction has left our forests exposed. Government ineptitude has put us in the terrible situation where the disease is beyond containment and spreading rapidly. It is now the government's duty to face up to its responsibilities, admit it got this one wrong, and work towards overcoming the huge environmental, economic and ecological impact this terrible disease will inevitably bring.